Hey everyone, this is Jackson Martin in the Department of Art and Art History at UNC Asheville with another how-to video for 3D design. Continuing with forms, we're going to move into a slightly more complex form, a tapered cup. We just did a cylindrical form, a mug, but this one is slightly more complex. But like the mug, it can be laid out on a flat surface. So I'm going to use a piece of brown craft paper instead of cardboard to make my measurements on, because it actually requires a little bit of guesswork, and it's a lot easier to do that on brown paper. So I start with the large compass. I move the point all the way out to the edge, put my point at the corner of the paper, draw my arc. Now this compass does max out at 12 inches for a radius. But like I said, this is where I'm going to start my guesswork on the tapered cup. So then I grab my ruler, and from that compass point in the paper, I'm going to draw a line to the outer arc along one side of the paper. The next step that I'm going to do is actually measure the height of the mug. Using a ruler or whatever's handy, and in this case it's about 5 3/4. So then I'm going to take that ruler and that measurement and measure down from my arc that distance, 5 3/4, make a mark along that first line that I drew, get my compass, put it back into the original, puncture in the paper, loosen the knob, pull back my pencil until it lines up with that 5 3/4 mark, tighten the knob, and make another arc, which will correspond with the bottom of the cup. Now that top arc, the distance of that top arc should be the circumference of my circle. So now I have to determine what that circumference is. I can measure the diameter and multiply it by pi to get my diameter. But if you have a flexible tape measure handy, you can wrap it around your mug and not have to worry about a calculator. In this case, it's 10 3/4 as a circumference. I am going to add a little bit of extra for overlap and end up with 11 3/4. So I have a 1/2 inch of overlap. So I slowly work around the arc with the flexible tape measure until I get to my measurement, which was 10 3/4. But I'm going to, like I said, add a little bit of dimension for overlap. So I'm going to go with 11 3/4. I make a mark there, and then I'm going to line up that new line with the original compass point and draw the second edge, the second line that I'm using. Alright, so that top arc corresponds to the top circumference, and the side, 5 3/4, is the height of the cup. But the bottom arc should correspond to the bottom of the cup, but since I'm guessing at the size of the arcs, I probably am not going to be exact, and I'll show you in a minute what I mean by that. But I'm going to wrap the tape around there, the bottom, to get 7 3/4. That's the distance that this bottom arc should be, and so I'm going to measure what I have, what I ended up with randomly. I've got 6 inches, so I'm actually 7 and some change short of what I want to be. So basically what that means is that my compass is too short. I'm going to end up with a much more tapered cup than what I would like. But since this compass maxes out at 12 inches for a radius, I'm going to slip that off, and in the classroom we have longer aluminum poles that you can create larger arcs with, and will be kind of necessary if you want to make a tapered cup. So I slip those pieces onto the larger aluminum arc, and I'm actually just gonna pull the compass point out to where my ruler maxes out at 18 inches, which is 6 inches longer than my original arc was. Again, some guesswork, but eventually you'll kind of dial it in and figure out what you need exactly. So I line up the original compass point to to that original point, make a new arc on the paper, and kind of repeat the same process that I did just a minute ago. Line up the compass point with the new edge of your arc. Draw a line, and then measure the height of the cup, which was 5 3/4, which is actually really close to that first arc. And then I'm going to put the compass back, line it up with that new 5 3/4 bottom of my cup, and draw my new arc. Then I'm going to measure the same circumference that I measured earlier, which was 10 3/4, and I'm going to add my extra inch for overlap. Make a new mark. And line up the original compass point with my new mark. Draw a line. And then the top arc is the same as it was before. The bottom arc now, since I used a longer compass, should be a longer distance, and we'll see if I got any closer. So it's actually 7 7/8. That's a little bit shy of the overlap that I want, but I think I'm going to be a lot closer. So for the demo's purpose, I'm going to try this out. It might be a smidge more tapered than my cup, but I don't think it's going to be far off from what I need. Since it's brown paper, I don't have to use an X-Acto knife and a ruler. I actually can just cut it out by hand using scissors. And what's great about this brown paper is it also bends really, really easily, and is convenient for testing things out as you go along. So I kind of just pinch it, hold it up to the cup, and it's actually pretty darn close to what I want. So I feel pretty good about this. If this was my project, I'm pretty close. I think I'm close enough. The other great thing about the brown paper is that I can then lay it onto my cardboard, not have to redo anything, any measurements or any arcs, and just use it as a template. Trace that template and cut out my cardboard. Now, the tricky thing with bending the cardboard when it's in this shape is that you can't really use the corrugation to your advantage. So if you want it to bend consistently, you'll most likely need to draw regular lines around that conical shape, make slight cuts in those through the top layer of cardboard and the corrugation so that it bends consistently as you bend it around. You'll use the same method as in the cylindrical mug form of cutting the outer edge and the interior edge on the other side for overlap, and taping it and kind of adhering it together is really up to you as far as the function of it as well as the aesthetics of it. But you can see some of these student examples of more tapered cup forms and slightly tapered ice cream form there. It was a little more complicated, but the student did a really good job. Yeah, and that's how you make a tapered cup form.